Greetings, neighbors. Welcome to the Perfect Sense podcast. I'm your host, Alex Becerra. I represent the Community Relations and Financial Education team here at Safe Credit Union. Very excited for this collection of episodes because we are celebrating America Saves Week 2026. What does that mean? We'll be covering a whole wide range of different financial topics to help you build financial freedom for now and the future. I am very excited today to have a conversation about borrowing. And I'm happy to welcome a previous friend of the show. He's been on here before, Lawrence Lomeli. Lawrence, welcome back. For those that are not familiar, do you mind just providing a quick introduction to who you are and what you do here at Safe?
Yeah, sure. So thank you. Wonderful introduction. I've been with Safe now about 9 years. I'm the AVP of Consumer Lending. So we specialize in all things consumer. So this is signature loans, personal loans, car loans. I've been in the industry now going on over 35 years. So definitely excited to be here and to help some of our members grow financially.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, fun fact. So back in January, I celebrated my 12-year anniversary at Safe, and it flew by. I got to say, it's been such a fulfilling experience that I'm like 12 years in. All right, let's do the next 12.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in the same boat. It's really an exciting time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, today our focus for America Saves Week is going to be borrowing, which I feel like you really are a subject matter expert in this space. And we don't want to have too many frills. So let's dive right into the conversation. First thing I want to know, I think when a lot of, general folks think about borrowing, lending, credit, it can be very anxiety inducing. There's a lot of emotions that are often tied to that.
Yep.
From your perspective, can you share with us why borrowing should really be looked at as like a financial tool and not necessarily a burden?
It is a tool. When people borrow, it's used to achieve things financially that they're desiring. So, for example, it can do big ticket items, buy your house, buy your car, help you get an education, build your credit for future use. And so these are the big areas that credit can really help with. And it's really important to understand it because it's going to be with you your whole life. And so better to understand it and work with it and take it to your advantage.
Absolutely. That's such an insightful take. And I think one thing that I particularly love about this podcast medium is we have such an opportunity to reach a wide, diverse audience, right? And so we have folks that are listening from different age ranges, different industries that they might be working in. And so let's just kind of like build the foundation here.
Yeah.
If somebody is very new to the idea of credit or even borrowing, what are some things that they should know before they go into a relationship that requires them to borrow money?
I think you need to understand the basics. Like what is credit? How does it work? How can I use that to achieve my financial goals? I think there's a misconception about the loans that you're taking out and the credit. They're really two separate areas that I think people need to understand. And I think that if you get a grip on the credit and your credit profile and how you can use that to your advantage, then the debt you're taking out to achieve your financial goals becomes a leverage to propel you and to achieve your financial goals.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like in the space that I work in, right, like I'm doing a lot of financial education. So some days the topic may be different. We might be focusing on budget or breaking down credit or what does the home buying journey look like? And one thing that I find is like I really get excited about the topic of credit because you really can pick it apart. You can look at it in a granular sense. And when you don't understand what might influence your credit or what are those factors that are impacting your credit, it can really be a light bulb moment when you start to uncover what those things truly are. So,
Yep.
can you expand a little bit and tell us more about like the relationship between credit, your credit score, and what that translates to when you're borrowing?
Yeah, that's really an important question. Let's talk about that. Credit itself is built up over time. And so the score that, you want a higher score, but what goes into that? What creates a higher score? And that is your repayment of debt. So when you borrow money and you repay it on time, that is the number one weighted factor that will give you the best score. More importantly, or as importantly, I guess these are all factors that boil into this, is the mix of credit. Signature loans, collateral secured loans such as an auto loan, boat loan, motorcycle loans, things like that. They go into the mix, and then depth of your credit profile. How long have you been in file also builds into that credit score. So as you start off, obviously you have no credit, you start working your way up, the credit score improves. And why do you even want a high score? You want a high score because that gives you better interest rates. And better rates means better cost for you as a consumer, and gives you more options. Banks want to do business with you, financial institutions want to work with you, credit unions want to work with you, and so obviously that helps build you to achieve your goals.
And one thing that I find is when I'm presenting to any given audience, the way that I sort of frame this idea of credit and credit score is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a rewards versus a penalty system, if we're
It is.
honest. And it's
So yeah,
the one thing that I try and reiterate with folks is even if you're coming from a position where you have challenged credit, maybe you've experienced some hardships in the past, right? That's not necessarily a reflection of like your self-worth as an
correct.
individual, but it's great to kind of acknowledge and understand where you are on that scale and then start to diagnose and attack the things that you can do to like positively impact that credit score, right? Once you can
Yep.
kind of acknowledge what are your behaviors, what are your patterns, and what is your sort of relationship to credit, oftentimes you can address those issues and like see positive growth over time. So that's one thing I really like to throw out there is that like again, because it's such a complicated topic that comes with a lot of emotions and feelings attached to it, you know, I want to let people know that you can empower yourself. There are things you can do to put yourself in a position to be successful.
Yeah, I'd like to spend a little on that because, like you said, we're a wide variety of audience here. So we may have people with some challenging credit. I think understanding the importance of credit and how it works, it is not tied to your self-worth. It's an indication of things that might have happened in the past. And let's face it, a lot of people have gone through a lot of things. You have divorce, you have medical industry. I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. There's a lot of things that can impact your credit or ability to repay that are outside your control. I think one thing you can do is understand what this is so that you have a nice self-awareness, and you can control the elements that are in your wheelhouse to make sure that you're improving on your credit and getting that for your own financial. If an outside thing happens, say a medical condition, things happen and that impacts your ability to earn income, which impacts your ability to repay bills. That is not that is not a death sentence for credit. It just means it's a setback and you can work to rebuild that.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. And from like a personal testimonial, right? And I'm sure probably a lot of folks can resonate with this. Like your credit is a journey, right? So at any point in time, you may be somewhere on that scale between like poor credit and excellent credit. And to kind of, again, just sort of be able to follow that journey and make sense of it, I think is so worthwhile to folks. And again, like when we think of different types of lending, you've sort of touched on this before of how there's like different loans. There's loans that have collateral, there's secured loans, or you have your unsecured loans. What are some things that you might caution people about to look for in terms of like red flags when they are attempting to borrow?
Yeah, that's really good. You want to avoid payday loans. Payday loans are short-term loans, very high interest rates, very high risk. And, there's a need for it. Obviously, that's why they exist. But boy, as a consumer, it's can be a real trap. In addition to that, you want to understand if you're using credit to pay for everyday living expenses, that's a serious red flag. If you're using your credit cards to buy groceries and gas, like because you just don't have the money, that's a red flag. Not meeting your minimum payments or only making minimum payments, those are also red flags that you're kind of teetering on the edge. And that's not necessarily a good thing. And so you want to use credit responsibly, and you wanna be aware that, that credit itself and these types of things are used to achieve financial goals. And, buying groceries, you know, well, that's definitely a need. That's really not a credit need or shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I would imagine from the wealth of experience that you have, right? It's not uncommon for people to find themselves in a position where they've accumulated a lot of debt, whether that's through credit cards or the high priced auto loans or really anything, right? It's not an uncommon story. And so That's the other thing to your point about making minimum payments, right? Like you can create a strategy to start to attack and pay down some of those debts, but you've got to be very intentional about it. And so some folks may have heard of like the debt snowball or the debt avalanche, which I would encourage anybody to really like build their knowledge base on, so you can have a better understanding of like, okay, it's like imagining a room where there's water coming in and there's all these different holes in the room. You can't plug all of them at the same time, but you kind of got to focus on what you're going to repair first. And then once you've done that, you can check it off the list and move on to the next debt.
And it feels good. To your point earlier, you said it's a journey. It is a journey. And then having that financial awareness, knowing, okay, there are times people get laid off. Like I said, stuff happens in life and it can cause you to get behind. But I want to caution people that you don't go into your give a factor doesn't go away, right? There are cases, I've seen it in the car business, where people buy a car and they're realizing, oh my goodness, I'm already spending $20,000 on a new car. Well, I may as well spend 30 and get the car I want. Well, that's uh, you know, a lot more debt you're taking on just because you let your guard down. It's almost people dieting and they're on a good diet and they're being good and they have a donut and next thing you know, they have 4 donuts. It's like, no, you have to have that self-control and be aware of that.
I'm very familiar with eating one too many donuts, so I can relate.
Yeah, yeah.
So another thing that we sort of do with this podcast format is really try and educate folks on like, why is a credit union a better option than a traditional for-profit bank, right? And so
Yeah.
kind of demystifying that, letting people know why a credit union may be a better relationship for them in terms of their banking needs. Let's talk a little bit about SAFE. Like, what does SAFE Credit Union do to help people, especially in terms of borrowing, to ensure that they are in a position to be successful and not be overwhelmed with the debt that they carry?
Yeah. So what separates SAFE as a credit union from other financial institutions is that you are a member. We're member driven. So you can become a member of SAFE if you live, work, or worship in our field of membership, right? And when you do that, you become part owner in this adventure with us. And so that means the profits are distributed back to you as a member in the form of lower rates, lower fees or no fees, better terms. And so it's a relationship you have a stake in, as opposed to, say, a publicly owned financial institution where they're in it for their stockholders and their board of directors, right? So that's the primary difference. Is SAFE has an interest in our members in protecting you and helping people grow financially to achieve their goals.
Absolutely. And just to touch kind of again in my realm, some of the things that we offer for our members, especially from the financial education perspective, is obviously we have resources like this podcast. We have a monthly series of webinars that touches on all different topics. We have a lot of on-demand resources and tools that folks can tap into. And one thing that I'm really excited about, myself and Savannah, my teammate, we actually have this like certification called Credit Union Financial Counselor. So we actually can work with individuals one-on-one to coach them through areas where they might want to be improving, whether that is like building a stronger budget or saving for the future or rehabbing their credit. So there's a lot that we try to do that goes above and beyond just people's day-to-day banking experience. And I think
Right.
that really adds a lot of value, especially when people get to experience that and see it in practice.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, like we talked about earlier, people have challenging credit due to whatever reason, whether it's lack of knowledge, you just got yourself in a pickle, or whether it was a response to an incident. You can rebuild that, and these tools, knowing how to do that. I also noticed that over the years, some people go into financial shock, like they just realize, wow, they don't know what to do. If they were clear-minded, they would know exactly how to proceed, but because they're in that moment, it's confusing, and so that's where this financial counseling can really be of value to point them in the right direction, and we have tools to help them do that.
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you mentioned that, right? Because I think we are in this industry. So it's like we live and breathe this stuff day in and day out. But you have your general folks that are either going to school or they're working and they're providing for their family. They're typically not thinking of their banking first and foremost. They're like, hey, if I can log into my mobile app and see what my balances are, that's good enough for me. And we kind of want to encourage them to, again, empower yourself, like figure out what tools and resources are there to help you along that journey of building financial freedom. To kind of tie it back maybe to a little bit of a personal sense, one thing that I also like to focus on this podcast is like goal setting.
Yep.
So just from your personal perspective, Lawrence, what is a financial goal that you're currently prioritizing?
Well, I never thought I'd be saying this, but I'm looking closer and closer at retirement. That seems so far off in the future. I was worried about a house and a car, but I'm actually seeing, what would that look like? Like it's not that far away anymore. And so my shift now, I'm kind of past the schooling. I've raised the kids. And so now at this point, maybe looking at that goal of the everyday retirement, like what does that look like for me? And so my mind has shifted and that's what's next for me.
That's so exciting. I'm going to tell you, don't go anywhere too soon.
No.
I love having these conversations. And yeah, it's so funny, right? Because I love connecting with people in this sense because you kind of in that life trajectory. I feel like I'm very much at the beginning of that where it's like, yeah, I became a homeowner maybe 6 or 7 years ago. My kids are 5 and 6 years old. They're now, in school. We're starting to do like a lot more extracurricular stuff. The big thing for me and my wife is like, we want to upgrade our appliances. When we moved into the house, it used to be my grandmother's. So like a lot of the appliances are showing their age. Like I want some more like upgraded stuff. So for me, I would say the next year or two that's probably going to be my priority focus. And then hopefully once we cross off some of those like home related things, maybe we can start to look at traveling again. I feel like we've been on a long hiatus of going anywhere or seeing anything new. So that's probably what we'll be working towards. But as always, I really appreciate you being here and just thanks for being part of our America Saves Week celebration. We want to, kind of take a lot of the philosophies and lessons that we learned this week and apply them all throughout the year. So Lawrence, you're excellent. I so appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. And I think our listeners are probably going to get a lot out of all your different insights.
Nice. And I hope, thank you for having me. It's been really, engaging, and we have a lot of tools available to help our members. And so I'm looking forward if I can help in any way, let me know.
Last question, if you don't mind. We are local to the Sacramento region. I am curious, are there any particular like small local businesses in our region or restaurants maybe that you've been to recently that you'd like to shout out?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I'm a foodie, so I like going to food places and seeing what they have to experience. So you'll find me at Land's Ocean or, somewhere around. I really enjoy those types of restaurants. Yeah, and looking around and seeing what's there and enjoying it.
Big fan at Land Ocean. I've had several meals there, and yeah, it's never been a disappointment. So
Never.
yeah, great shout out. And yeah, thanks again for your time, Lawrence. And I look forward to welcoming you back in the future.
Thank you for having me and have a great day.
Awesome.
If you'd like to learn more about Safe products and services and how we can help you, visit our website at safecu.org and schedule an appointment with one of our professional experts today. Safe is federally insured by NCUA and is an equal housing opportunity lender. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform on topics surrounding financial well-being. This podcast does not constitute financial, tax, or legal advice and may not apply to your individual situation. You should consult with your own financial, tax, or legal advisor for specific information pertaining to your individual situation. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the participants expressing them and do not necessarily reflect those of Safe Credit Union or any of its officials.